Hello, this is Michael for the Outdoor Survival. I'm here to talk about pine trees. I'm definitely going to have to do this in two different videos because this is late summer and there's a lot of things that you can get off a pine tree in the spring that I'm just not going to be able to show you right here, and because the time has already passed. Trees everywhere. Everybody kind of knows the characteristic of a pine tree. When you pull off a needle, you'll instantly see the long needles or the short needles, whatever. But those are the leaves. They're not. They don't have flat needles like you see on a Christmas tree or something like that. That would be a spruce or a fir. It could be hemlock. It could be a poisonous yew plant or a poisonous Torreya plant. I think that's how you say it. There are many uses of a pine tree all throughout the year. I mean, that's one of the most useful trees in the world, besides the coconuts and the oaks and some other trees. But it would literally take me, 25 videos to explain everything you can do with a pine tree. You're actually going to see pine needles, and this one in a campsite is actually a plus because you can literally pile these, this high, and then put your cloth over it or a tin over it, and you got an air mattress. You can. This is semi good fire tender, depending on how much sap's in each tree. A pitch pine is going to have more sap than a long needle pine. Around the country, you're going to see different types of pine cones. I mean, this is a small version of a longleaf pine. They literally get about this big. But when you go out west, you're going to see the Coulter pine, Torrey pine, Jack pine. I mean, these things are huge. They're the size of human heads. And I had the fortune of being in San Bernardino in California and Arizona, so I got to see a lot of different types of pines. But I mean, you got pine cones this size, down to even pine cones this size. But the typical scales on a pine tree are very simple. Now, see, when you go to this right here, it looks like a pine cone, and the tree's going to look like a pine cone. But this is a sequoia tree. It looks like a pine cone, but it's not. It had actually this pine tree. I mean, this sequoia tree actually has a toxic poison in it, and if you were to use that, you would definitely get sick. Now, if you look at these cones right there, you'll see these little funny hair things that are coming off, and that's part of a fir tree, and that can be used as the same as a pine tree. All pine family trees can be pretty much used in the same way. The pines, you got the larches, you got the spruce, you got the fir, you got the hemlock. Those pretty much all fall in the same category. Even though they look different, the uses are pretty much the same because they're part of the pine family. And when you go in the forest and you haven't learned the pine family, looking at the cone can kind of give it away pretty easily. What'll happen is the pine cone, when it's growing on the tree, it just kind of grows off to the side like that, or a rect. Sometimes it'll be kind of straight up or a little bit droopy, but it's kind of off to the side. When you see a fir cone is going to be sticking straight up in the air. Spruce cone's going to be hanging. So those are two different types of signs that you can see too. A deodar cedar, Lebanon cedars and stuff, they'll be pointing straight up too, but they're these massive, beautiful cones with a lot of sap coming off of it. You can't mistake it. But when you see those characteristics of a pine tree, you know that you're not getting a sequoia or a cedar tree. A lot of people might see cedar trees or juniper trees and confuse those, and those are really part of cypress families and juniper family. So you want to make sure you understand those two. The yew plant will look like a hemlock tree, Carolina hemlock tree, but it's got flat needles, almost like a spruce tree too. But the way the needles are wrapped around will explain which one you have. A yew tree and a torreya, I think that's how you say it. Oh, we had them in Florida. I know they exist in California too. But those are part of the yew family, and they have fruit on it. And the yew will have a red fruit, which is actually edible but dangerous. That's where they get taxes from for making heart medicine. And as long as they're long, you can make coil baskets. When I'm talking about coil basket, here's a prime example of a coil basket. It's literally woven pine straw wrapped around. This one has bear grass wrapped around it. And this is a very strong basket. I mean, it can carry a serious load. So even in the pine forest, you can make a basket out of pine needles. And you can find yucca or whatever. You can use all different kinds of things to find it. And what the Indians would do also is they would take pine sap and rub it all over the top of this, and it would turn black with a little bit of charcoal. And they had a waterproof pot that they could actually hold water in, and that was a very neat thing to do. Here's a prime example of a coil basket in the simple form. Now this one's not going to hold water because the weaves, not as tight. But if you put pine sap over the top of that, it will hold water. And you can weave these things into anything you want to. Weave them into hats. I mean, you name it. Baskets, purses, whatever. Okay, the pines are actually in my area are not even ready to be eaten right now, so I can't do a video on that right now. But when you see the typical pine cone, there's going to be the seeds. There's going to be two seeds for every scale there. And when you pull those out, they're going to have those little wing things on it, just like you see on a maple tree. And that's a good characteristic you got a pine. Now, when you go out west and you see the pinyon pines, they're not going to really have that wing on there. It's just going to be a little tiny nut standing in. But in the East Coast, the longleaf pine, this one here, the longleaf pine, it's about the only one that's going to really be worth your trouble getting into. Now, you can eat all pine nuts. We see pine nuts in the store today, but that's from the Italian stone pine or pinyon pine. But if you try to get it out of cones like this, you're just really wasting your time. Now, don't be fooled when you go out west. A pinyon pine cone is not going to be much bigger than that, and they're going to have some of the biggest nuts that you ever seen in there. So don't be fooled by the size of the pine cone. Just because it's big doesn't mean it has big seeds. When you're out west, you're going to see different types of pine trees, and you're gonna look for the sugar pines, the limber pines, the Torrey pine, the Calder pine. I think that's how I'm saying it. The gray pine and the Jerry pine and the pinyon pines, which is the single leaf pine, the Mexican pine, and the Pari pine. All those are going to have big seeds. So roughly, if you want pine nuts and you love pine nuts, you need to move to California. That's where they are. The big ones are in California. Some are in Arizona. Some are in Utah. But okay, when you're walking in the woods, there's several things you want to look for in a pine that could be used for your advantage. This is called blister disease. Um, when it starts affecting all the trees, it'll eventually kill all the trees. And what it'll do is it'll blister up, and all the sap will get stored in there, and it'll start dripping, like you can kind of see right there. Um, that's going to kill your pine forest eventually. It's really kind of knocking out the unwanted trees so the bigger trees can grow. But this advantage can be used as a torch. This is sap-filled wood right there. So once you cut this down and dry it a little bit, sometimes you can light it straight off. You got yourself a little torch there. You can go anywhere you want to. You can take this, jam it into the ground, and you can light it. A pine tree. You want to go up to the needles, and the easiest way to tell different pine trees in an area is look at and count how many needles it has. This one has 3 needles, and it's a certain size. When I'm in the woods and I'm in a general area and I don't know which pine I have, and I have a simple pine guide that you can see in books, you'll just take those needles and count them, and you're roughly going to have a certain amount of types of pines in your area that are going to have 3 needles. Here's one here. Here's a long leaf pine, but that one has 3 needles as well. But you can honestly see the difference there. I mean, there's not going to be too many pine trees with needles that long, so that pretty much tells you it's a long leaf pine. When you go and get pine needles for tea and stuff or food, you can come up here to the top, and what you do is you just walk by and you just kind of snug, and you'll see the brown things come off exactly, and they're still on the branch. They're not on here. You don't have to sit there and pick. But if you can see the color there, there's a difference in color of green. The more white you get, the more chewy it is. That's not going to pucker up your mouth. It's actually, I can sit here all day long and eat these things. It's got a citric acid taste that I can kind of compare to like a grapefruit. That's all I can think of. So when you take these, you just take it, slightly tug, and there you go. There's no brown sheath on the end of it. Now what else you can do for the rest of the needles is you can chop it up and make a wonderful, wonderful tea out of it. I mean, pine has a lot of antioxidants. It's one of the highest antioxidants in the world. It has an antioxidant called, I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's called proanthocyanins. I think that's how you say it. But it is one of the strongest antioxidants known to fight cancers and treat heart disease, a lot of different things, arthritis, colds, flus. And what that does is helps absorb vitamin C. This is your vitamin C right here. This has extremely lots amounts of vitamin C. So if you in the woods and you're having scurvy problems, which was common in the sailor days, they would start eating these, and they would get their vitamin C. They didn't have oranges back then all the place. They didn't have a lot of stuff that had vitamin C. But pretty much anywhere in the world that you go, besides the super deep tropic, you're going to have pine trees. And basically, the reason why I did this, I wanted to show you a simple method. Here I go. How easy this is to pull off. If you were trying to make basket material, here you go. You just pull this off instead of sitting there picking off the ground. You just do this and you dry the needles that way. And that way you know you have good clean needles that you really don't have to worry about doing anything to. You just let that sit out in the sun and dry. What I do here, there's bark in here. This is kind of the wrong year to gather it, but in a survival situation, you can't wait till spring to gather bark. You got to gather it whenever you can. And this is a quick, easy way of doing it. The best thing to do is get it from a big pine tree. But because I'm using this, it'll make it a little bit. I had that point anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. Okay, there you go. Now the best tasting pine tree, if you're going to eat pine needles and stuff, always try to get it from the growing tip. They're very new needles. They got a lot more vitamin C in it. They're extremely edible. I can almost eat the whole entire needle when they're this stage. Okay, you see this terminal bud right here. This terminal bud is going to come out. It's going to, when in the springtime, this whole section right here was green. And when it was green, you could literally just pop this off. You see, it's not going to pop anymore. But in the springtime, it would have just literally popped off. And you just peeled the brown skin off and you eat. And it's very delicious. It can dry your mouth depending on the pine tree. But it's a good edible source there. Now if you see here, I just took off the terminal bud. There's another one right here. That's another food source. But still, even down at the bottom, that was a lot of meat right there. That's extremely good. It's not as puckery as if you just try to bite on the bark or something. There's another one. I won't even peel it. I'll just do this. Just bite down, squeeze out. Actually, a good piece of food right. Make sure you watch part 2 of this to get some more edible uses. I'm enjoying my pine needle tea while I'm making this video. See you soon.